Masechet Moed Katan Daf Kaf Gimel. Yesterday, we enumerated the many differences between someone mourning over the loss of his parents versus other relatives. And we ended off saying that in some aspects, when a Nasi, when the patriarch of the head of the Jewish community of Israel dies, then everybody has some of the customs of mourning like a parent. In terms of tearing all of one's clothes, even the outer garment, and not mending them. And so we continue with that theme of the extreme mourning that the community has over its leadership. Al chacham choletz miyamin, al av betin misemol, al nasi mikan umikan. Here we see three levels of leaders. Chacham, that seems to mean the local sage who teaches and answers halachic questions to a particular bet knesset, to a particular community. And when that person dies, then those that are under his authority should reveal their right shoulder. Av betin is a higher level. He's in charge of the betin of a whole area. And so in that case, those under his authority would reveal their left shoulders, left being more mourningful than the right, perhaps because it's on the side of the heart. Al Nasi Mikan Mikan, when the Nasi is the highest level authority over the whole Jewish people of Israel, and then people bear both their shoulders to show their extreme state of mourning. Okay, Tenora Banan Braita teaches Chacham Shemet Bet Midrasho Batel. Betin Shemet Kol Bate Midrashot Shebairo Betelin V'Nichnasin Bet HaKnesset Umshanin Et Mekoman Hayoshim Besafon Yoshim Bedarom Yoshim Bedarom Yoshim Besafon. Explain that. When a Chacham dies, so then his Bet Midrash is empty for the period of mourning. His Bet Midrash is closed. Not appropriate for the Chacham to be sitting and the students still learning in the Bet Midrash. So when a higher level, when Av Betin dies, then all of the Bet Midrash in that entire city will close because they're all under his authority and so in deference to him. And those who go to Bet Knesset can go to, nevertheless, even though the Bet Midrash are closed, Bate Knessiyot are open. However, when they go to Bet Knesset, they should sit in a different place. If they sit on the northern side, they should sit in the south. Those who usually sit in the south should sit in the north, perhaps indicating that the Betin was the one who showed them right and wrong, their Yaminu small. And so now it shows that, yes, we're coming to Bet Knesset, we're going to pray Besibur, but we still feel like we have no direction. We're all mixed up, and remind them of their state of mourning. When the Nasi dies, all of the Bate Midrash and the whole land, they stop learning Torah. They close in deference to the Nasi. The Bate Knessiyot can remain open, and people will go there. But they only go there to read Sefer Torah. It says they read 7 aliyot. So that means it's referring to Shabbat when we read 7 aliyot. So they would not be learning in the Bet Knesset. No one's giving a darasha. They're not even praying tefillah b'tzibur, not in the Bet Knesset at least. But rather they come just so that we don't have no one reading the Parashat HaShavua. They'll read the Torah, and that's all. Okay, don't think when we tell them that Bet Midrash is closed, Bet Knesset only open for reading Torah, and then everybody leave. It doesn't mean that they should spend the time just strolling in the marketplace. Rather, the point is that they should go home and sit quietly in mourning. In other words, everybody is in a state of mourning for the loss of the great leaders. Another law is that one may not talk about laws or agadot in the house of an Avel, because that brings joy. The Avel himself is not allowed to learn or teach Torah, and so therefore the others also should refrain from speaking about Torah. That brings joy. And nevertheless, even though that is the official halacha, Rabbi Chananya ben Gamliel, he would talk about halacha and agada in a bet avel. So he either did not agree with this rule. Some say he was talking about on Shabbat, or when there's no public avelut, and then that would be public if you weren't talking about the divrei Torah. Okay. I mean, nowadays the usual custom is that the people visiting, they read Tehillim and sometimes they'll say Divrei Torah. The Avelim will just listen, but on the side, but not get engaged, so that the people coming to visit will at least benefit from some Tehillim and Torah learning. Tenoda banan Avel Shabbat Rishona eno yosef petach beto. Shiniya Yosef eno yosef b'mkomo. Shelishit Yosef b'mkomo ve'eno medaber. Revi'i tarehu kechol adam. So in Avel, the first Shabbat here might mean the actual Shabbat day, but more likely it means the week. The first week of his mourning, he should not leave his home. Right? That was the usual custom. People generally would be sitting in their shiva in their own home, so they would sleep there, or would wake up there, and people would bring them food. They would not go to Beit Knesset, and they would not leave. We did see that an exception. An Avel after 3 days can go visit another Avel. Right, but that's it. They should just stay there to concentrate on their Avelut. During the second week, they can go out and they can go to Beit Knesset, but they should sit in a different seat in the Beit Knesset. Again, they're not totally back to there. It's a transition to get back to normal society. So they're in a different seat. In the third week, they can sit in his regular seat, but should not speak. Just sit there quietly, in a kind of sullen mood. By the fourth week, then he's like everybody else, and he can sit in his regular place and talk. This is a good source for those who want to argue that one is allowed to talk in shul. You see that only an Avel in the third week is not allowed to talk in shul. Everybody else is allowed. Okay, just kidding. We do have a remnant of this law that when an Avel does come on Shabbat during the Shiva, and there's some communities that Avel will sit in the back, sit in a different seat, and people then will come and sit with them for some time. So we don't really do it during the second week, but as the Baraita says, but we do it sometimes. Okay, Rabbi Yehuda, that's all Tanakama. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, lo struchu lomar Shabbat Rishona, lo yesem petach beto, sharei hakol nichnasin lebeto lenachamo. Yehuda says, no, you don't have to tell me that the first week of mourning he doesn't leave his house, because after all, everybody's coming over to his house to visit him and to comfort him. So obviously he's going to be home all the time. So therefore, that doesn't even need to be said. Rather, he pushes each of these stages forwards 1 week, and in that sense, he's more stringent. The second week of his mourning, he doesn't leave home. He's not Avel anymore. People are not coming to visit. He's not sitting on the floor, but still, he should show more deference, more mourning, and not be ready to just come back and see people in shul. The third week, then he can leave his house, go to Beit Knesset, but not sit in his regular place. The fourth week, he sits in his regular place, but sits quietly. Only on the fifth week, then he can act normally like everybody else. Good. Tenor banan. Kol shiloshim yom le nisuin. During the 30 days of a mourner, he may not marry. It's too happy to go get married during the shiloshim. Meta ishto asur isha acheret ad she'avru alav shelosha regalim. Okay, that the halacha of 30 applies to most relatives pass away. Then he can get married after 30 days. But if a man's wife passes away, then he should not marry another until 3 holidays have passed. 3 regalim, right? Pesach, Shavuot, Sukkot. Whatever order happens to be whenever that person dies, should wait those 3 kind of festivals that will get him out of that mood. Okay, what's the difference between someone else dying and his wife? Well, it's 2 reasons. Number one, he shouldn't get married. Getting married right away means he didn't care about his wife too much. He should show some respect to his first wife. And second of all, to make some separation between his first wife and the second wife. The second wife is coming in, wants to have a happy marriage and have a new to turn over a new leaf. And so if 30 days only, the man is still thinking about his first wife, and it's not quite psychologically ready. It's not fair to the second wife to do that, and therefore should wait till 3 holidays have passed. Rabbi Yehuda is a little bit more lenient, and he says he has to wait 2 holidays, but by the third one, he already will be ready. So don't have to wait till after the third one finishes, but he can get married before. For this purpose, we do not count Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, but rather we're talking about the shalosh pamim bashana, shalosh regalim. There is an exception to this rule, which is if a person has no children from his first marriage, has no children at all, then he can get married right away because the mitzvah of having children is of greatest value, and therefore immediately, probably after he gets up from the shiva, he can go and get married. Another exception is if the person has small children, then he also can get married so that he has a wife to take care of the children. He won't be able to take care of the little kids on his own, and so that is necessary for Peri Abrivia and for bringing them up. And here is a story applying this very rule that Yosef HaKohen, his wife died, and at the cemetery, he went over to his sister-in-law and said, please come and take care of my children. So some saying, come, live with me and take care of my children is in a way proposing, will you marry me? So you see that was done at the cemetery. Well, so, no time to waste. I mean, someone's got to take care of the kids that very night, that next day. And nevertheless, he did not consummate the marriage for a long time. He waited 30 days to consummate the marriage in order to also fulfill the original sense of the law that this is, a very happy thing. And so he wants to make some separation between his first and second wife in terms of their relationship, in terms of taking care of the kids. That was necessary right away. Okay, it's also interesting that he married his sister-in-law. One's not allowed to be married to two sisters, not at the same time, and not even while both are alive. In other words, if he would divorce one, he still cannot marry the other one. But if the first wife is not alive, then one can marry the sister. And I know this was done in the case of Chief Rabbi Amar, who lost a daughter tragically, who had children, and his son-in-law then married another one of his daughters, who then came and took care of the family. So this happened back then, and it even happens still today. Tenor Rabbanan, kol shiloshim yom legihutz, echad kelim chadashim, echad kelim yeshanim, yotzin mitoch hamachbesh. Okay, so we have we're going to see three opinions here regarding wearing newly pressed or ironed clothing. So for 30 days, one should not wear new clothing or even old clothing that comes from the press. Here's a picture of ancient press that would make the clothing all nice and fresh and like new. And so that's too joyous for the first 30 days. Rabbi said, no, you're only not allowed to wear new clothing during 30 days, but old clothing, even if it's pressed, that's okay. He's even more lenient and says, no, the only problem is if it's new and white. Because white garments are especially pristine and person's very, very happy and joyous to wear white clothing. But if it's colorful clothing, then even if it's new, that would be permitted. Okay. Now a couple of stories. Abaye went out while he was in that 30 days with a white garment, but it was old. And so you see, he followed the B that says, as long as it's old, even if it's white and pressed, it's okay because it's not new. Whereas Rava, he went out when he was in mourning with her in 30 days with a new cloak, nice Roman robe, probably very, very beautiful, and it was red. And since it wasn't white, even though it was new, it was permitted because he followed the third most lenient opinion of Rabbi Elazar ben Rabbi Shimon. All right. Now we go back to the Mishnah that said that Shabbat there's always a Shabbat within a Shiv'ah, and Shabbat counts as one of the days of Shiv'ah, right? So that if one starts sitting on a Tuesday, one will get up on Monday, right? Because Shabbat counts as one of the days. But it does not break the Shiv'ah. This is the opposite of Yom Tov, right? Which the Mishnah says Yom Tov is mafseket, right? Once Yom Tov comes, that breaks the 7. Right, after the third day or even after the first day, we have so different opinions. Yom Tov breaks it, and Yom Tov is not Ola, or Yom Tov does not count as one of them. So, for example, if someone buries a loved one in the middle of Yom Tov on Chol Moed, then he does not start sitting Shiva. He does not start counting Shiva until after Yom Tov is finished. All right, so Yom Tov does not count as one of the days. So in that sense, Shabbat and Yom Tov are exactly opposite. Okay, so the rest of that we're going to be talking about what are the laws of Avelut on Shabbat. Bnei Yehuda, Bnei Gilila, Hane Amre. So the Jews that lived in Judea versus those who lived in the Galilee up north. Right, it's interesting that we're noting different customs that happen according to geography, not according to particular sage. There are some examples of that. So they had different customs. Some of them said, Yesh Avelut b'Shabbat. It doesn't say which one's which, but in the north or the south, one said that there are some customs of practices of mourning even on Shabbat. Probably means not public mourning, but there are some aspects of private mourning that are done on Shabbat. Like today, there are aspects of private mourning that are done on Shabbat, not public. But in the other geographical place, they said there's no mourning at all on Shabbat. When Shabbat comes, the mourner stops doing everything, 0, and then Saturday night, then they go back to mourning, but there is not even private Avelut on Shabbat. Now let's analyze these two compared to what the Mishnah just said. The one who says there are some practices of mourning on Shabbat, well, he can bring a proof from the Mishnah that says it counts. Why would you count Shabbat as one of the days of mourning unless you are doing something to mourn on Shabbat, even if it's something private, even if it's just the law that there's no marital relations? Okay, so he's doing that for mourning, so it counts as one of the days. But the one who says there's no Avelut from Shabbat, they can bring a proof from the other phrase that Shabbat does not break the Shiv'ah. Why do you have to tell me Shabbat does not break the Shiv'ah? Right? If there is Avelut on Shabbat, then obviously it wouldn't break the Shiv'ah. You would only have to teach me that Avelut, that Shabbat does not break the 7, if there is no mourning at all on Shabbat. And you have to say, even though there's no mourning on Shabbat, still it doesn't break the 7. So that's that opinion will bring a proof from the second word of the Mishnah. Okay, now we're going to ask a challenge. Right, so the second opinion is going to challenge the first one. And furthermore, if you think that there is Avelut b'Shabbat, right, this is actually the proof that they're using. If there is Avelut, would you have to tell me that it doesn't interrupt the 7? Obviously it doesn't. That's my proof. Okay. Okay, but a challenge to that one that says that there's no mourning, doesn't it say that we count it as one of the days? So why would you mention counting it as one of the days if there's no mourning? Why would you count it? Why would you count it as one of the days? There's no mourning at all. You shouldn't count it, right? Skip it. So the answer is I did the kabal limit nasefa and nan olim tanaresha ola. The answer is you're right. There's no need to say it, but the only reason is because in the sefa, when it talks about Yom Tov, over there it says enam olim, right? That if someone dies in the middle of Yom Tov, we do not start counting in the middle of Yom Tov. Since it says over there enam olim, so that's why in this clause it tells us Shabbat counts, right? That's the only reason why it said it. But you're right, since there is some mourning, one would not actually need to mention it. Now that we established this logical principle that we only said the word olah regarding Shabbat because it needed to be said for the sefer regarding Yom Tov, well, now we can use that principle to answer this question that we had right here. Right, right? So that's what we just asked. If you say that there are some practices of Avelut on Shabbat, then why would you need to tell me that Shabbat does not break it? Obviously, it doesn't break it. After all, you're still practicing Avelut. Well, that this person can answer Mishum de Kabbalah Midnasefa Mafsikin. Since for Yom Tov we have to say Yom Tov does break it. So Tanaresha and Namafseket. That's why the beginning said that Shabbat does not break it, even though that would be obvious because there are some laws of mourning. And so therefore, actually is no proof either way from the Mishnah to this opinion or that opinion. And so they're both, we believe them both standing. Some say there's no laws of mourning on Shabbat. Some say there are some laws of mourning on Shabbat. Okay, but now we say, perhaps these two practices in the north and south do match up with the following two Tanaim. Mishe is a long baraita. We're going to see the other opinion at the end. Someone who is deceased is in front of him cannot eat in front of them. Okay, so this is someone's watching over the body. It's not appropriate to be eating right in front of the dead body. It's kind of making fun. You can't eat anymore. I can eat. Right? Not appropriate. And so therefore, you should go to a different house and someone else can watch the body in the meantime. And if he has nowhere else to go, he doesn't have another house himself, he can go to a friend's house or a different room. And if he has no other place to go, not even of a friend, he can remain in the same room with the corpse and just make a mechitza 10 tefachim high, and that shows a separation. And if he doesn't have anything, he just turns around, faces away from the body, and then he can eat, right? We can't expect him to starve. It might be a long time till the arrangements are made, and he's watching over it. Okay, that's one law. He should not recline, right? A lot of times when they were eating in an official meal, they would be reclining like 3 people and all that. So that's not, you don't have a nice, big, enjoyable meal like that. You don't eat meat. You shouldn't drink wine. Okay, now all these things are, the first group was when one is actually in front of the body. In a different room, it's okay. The next things are all talking about an onen, a relative of the deceased. After death, before burial, a person is called onen, and during that time cannot have meat and wine. Does not say berachot, does not lead a zimun. Other people do not say a bracha on behalf for him. The other person will say hambosi, and the mourner answer amen. No, none of that. He does not join. Not only does not lead, does not join a zimun. In fact, he is exempt from saying Shema, from saying Amidah, from wearing tefillin, from all mitzvot of the Torah. Okay, this does not mean he can go and murder people. He's only exempt from mitzvot aseh. Okay, so during aninut, right? That's it. No berachot. He doesn't have to listen to other people. The reason is because he has to be involved. He's involved in one mitzvah already. He has to concentrate on taking care of the dead, setting up everything for the burial. He also is not in a mode to be able to concentrate on all these other mitzvot, which require concentration. And so therefore, that is the halacha till today. The onen does not say any berachot. Shabbat. However, Shabbat is different. So in other words, he's still an onen, right? The person died on Shabbat or right before Shabbat. They didn't get a chance to bury that person yet. But Shabbat is different. He can recline and eat. In honor of Shabbat, he can have meat and wine. On Shabbat, he would have to say blessings and lead a zimun, or other can say amosi for him, say a blessing, or he can join into a zimun, and he does need to say Kiryat Shema. He does have to say Amidah. He does have to wear tefillin and all the other mitzvot on Shabbat. Okay, the word tefillin is very curious here because we don't wear tefillin on Shabbat. So why is it talking about tefillin? Okay, I guess you could say a simple answer. It mentioned tefillin agav, since it mentioned it in the first half when it was not Shabbat, and you don't wear tefillin, so I mentioned it here too. But really, it doesn't make sense to have tefillin. And if we, in fact, we look at the manuscripts, we'll find that The tefillin here is found in printed editions, but is not found in any of these manuscripts. It says tefillah, tefillah, not in here. It's found only in two manuscripts. One is the Vatican, which is Ashkenazi manuscript. The other one is actually a Geniza fragment that says tefillah, tefillin. And usually, Geniza fragments are the best, but I think you see that even here, sometimes a scribe can slip up and wrote tefillah, tefillin because it was in the previous line and just wrote it agav here. It made it into his printed editions. But Rashi, and you see this is supported by most manuscripts, do not have the word tefillin for Shabbat. Okay, that's all Tanakama. Rabban Gamliel Omer, mitoch shitche be'elu, nitche bechulan. Rabban Gamliel says on Shabbat, since the mourner is required to do all these things, Shema, Tefillah, he is required to fulfill all the obligations of the mitzvot. Well, what is he adding on? Right, there's one of the practices of mourning that is not just a shoot, it's mitzvah, and that is having relations with his wife. So even though generally a mourner is prohibited, Rabbi Yochanan is explaining to us that according to the Rabban Gamliel, a mourner has to practice the mitzvah of Onah and be with his wife on Shabbat while he is a mourner. He says yes. Tanakama says no. Tanakama says that the mourner is required to do all these other mitzvot, because he's chayav in mitzvot in general, and he would not practice public mourning, but this tashmish hamita is in private, and so therefore the mourner may not do tashmish hamita when he's an Avel on Shabbat. And so there you go. Here is a difference between the two. According to Tanakama, there is at least one practice of mourning on Shabbat. According to the Rabban Gamliel, there are 0 mourning practices on Shabbat, and this would match up with the north and the south, whether there is or isn't any aren't any mourning practices on Shabbat. Okay, so this seems to make sense, but we reject it. Okay, this is the thesis. So can't we say that it does match up? That the Tanakama would say there is some Avelut on Shabbat because no Tashmish Hamita, and the Rabban Gamliel says no, there is no Avelut on Shabbat, and you are permitted in Tashmish Hamita, and now we reject it. Mimai Dilma ad kan lo kamar Tanakama hatam ela mishum demeto mutar lefanav. Maybe Tanakama would say one may not engage in marital relations during aninut because the body is in front of him. Doesn't mean necessarily literally in front of him, although all the more so, but even not. Even during a time of aninut, the body is not buried yet, so it would not be appropriate to have tashmish hamita on Shabbat. But here, in the case of an avel means after the burial for the next 7 days. Where the body is not in front of him, he buried already, and so then we would not say so. In other words, even Tanakama, who says no tashmish hamita on Shabbat for an onen, may agree that Avelut is more lenient, and he may actually be the one. He may agree that on Shabbat there's no mourning practices at all. That would be Tanakama's position. And we can also switch around the other. Maybe Rabban Gamliel says it's permitted to practice tashmish hamita on Shabbat for an onen because he's not an avel yet. You see, onen and avel, in some ways, avel is actually more lenient, in some ways, more strict. Right? For example, onen cannot have meat and wine. Avel can have meat and wine. Onen can wear shoes. Avel cannot wear shoes. So, right there, you can't just say one is more strict and one is more lenient. And so, perhaps Rabban Gamliel says, since he's only onen, not avel yet, he's permitted to have tashmish hamita on Shabbat. But maybe once Avelut starts, then he cannot. And it's actually, we're switching it now. Maybe the Rabban Gamliel is the one that says there are some mourning practices on Shabbat. And so you see that this machloket between the Rabban Gamliel and Tanakama regarding aninut, all right, they do argue, is there any mourning during aninut, has nothing to do with the original machloket between the north and the south, because that was talking about Avelut, and that Avelut is a different time period with its own criteria, and therefore We cannot match up those two opinions with the opinions of the Tanaim. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen.